They shout, gas them to your right. Behind, they grab you, kick you, smash your ribs with batons. In front is too much tear gas and pepper spray to see. Your eyes hurt and your lungs wheeze. You grab onto whoever, whatever is in front, not to fall and succumb to their trampling. The left is the only escape, a flood of people just like you, running for some light none of them can see, down an alley like those beside the Stonewall Inn. That was the scene of the night of March 31st, at a protest against police brutality on the day of transvisibility. Broken ribs, bruised skin, and young adults bandaged up in a flag of pink, blue, and white. I was already hunched over my notebook in the metro, trying to figure out what this day would mean. In my head, the death of Next Benedict, the 1-year anniversary barely passed, was still fresh, and I hoped I would get the opportunity to put an end to this painful chapter of trans brutalization under a militarized but ineffective police force. I was at the time unaware of Sam Nordquist, a much more recent trans victim whose death sparked a lackluster investigation. Quebec's own Conseil des Sages lay foreboding in the political distance, Pierre Poilievre's Gros Bon Sens, and American conservatives restoring common sense do not bode well for what that bon sens and sagesse might entail. Though I have faith the 3 people appointed on board the Conseil will try their best, I am not as convinced the underlying idea was in the spirit of human rights and development. These ideas, I knew, would come to a head in the following hours. I summarized the plan in my head one last time. Wear the obligatory mask, talk to everyone who might later elucidate on events, note down what you know. If nothing happens, you've lost nothing and might get the chance to make new queer connections. Always a plus. And if shit goes down, run. Finally outside, I'm passed by a young trans girl wearing the same mask, the same shade of all black. A small congregation of queers cuts chattering shadows in the red of dusk, though when it's time for them to head out, I understand the meaning of their talks. Some of them hug and, more prescient than I was, go home wishing their friends a safe return. A few hours before my first sign of danger, Mark was already in one of many pre-protest meetings. Having chosen to be a medic in the February Amazon Union rally here in Montreal, he's still new to the job. As he later told me, he has not yet seen a protest turn to violence like the events of March 31st yet, not as a medic. He, a bisexual cis man, self-described basic bitch, mildly customized, chose to participate in the March 31st protest because, like many of us in this current climate, the attacks on trans rights feel to him like the latest attempt to push back against the freedoms and visibility of minority groups. An attempt to put us all back in the box, closet, or coffin. As he sees it, we need to safeguard rights from the current American conservative wave of repression before it hits here in Canada. The goal of this meeting is first to distribute medical supplies, bandages, antiseptics, and Malox, an antacid to clear away pepper spray. Second, they aim for a refresher on basic protest safety. Stick together, grab hold of each other to both act as guides and protect from any visual impairments. Pepper spray, tear gas, hits over the face. While running away from the police, stand guard at any moment to flee. Finally, a refresher on how to help and signal help as a medic. A bottle of Malox clear over the head, standing on the sidelines, waiting for the injured to come to you. Mark tells me he is not prepared to deal with open wounds, should they occur. Neither Mark nor his team knew the path of the rally, which was mostly improvised. However, according to his team's rating system, this protest was deemed most likely to result in police violence. The meeting over, Mark and a few friends arrive early to find yellow-vested police officers trying to chat them up. When I arrived, I got some variation of "Bonne manif?" Mark does not reciprocate. They ask him and his group of about 10 for the leader of the rally. Mark does not engage, and as he tells me, he doesn't know who it might be anyway. That information is kept sealed for the safety of all involved. Others slowly trickle in around Jean Vauquelin and his stony stare, whose name Square Vauquelin, the meeting spot, shares. It's 19 o'clock. The rally has officially begun. People form concentric circles around their lieutenant, trying to size up the darkening evening. In the middle, journalists and what I presume to be march leaders with megaphones move around, once stepping up below the pedestal, once stepping down closer to the crowd. Further out, sometimes circling, sometimes buzzing, protesters participate in chants, gather in smaller groups, or wave around flags and messages. The late March night in my heavy black winter coat gave a tolerable, if not unpleasant, cold for an evening that might otherwise be spent walking peacefully through the streets of the city I've always known. That is, if I was alone, and if this was a regular evening. Unfortunately, just beyond the veil of the crowd, a few yellow-vested officers are standing guard, having just finished encircling us. Finally, out amongst the passing cars of the yet unsuspecting streets, one or two news vans, some police cars, and a few cameramen. I later read on the news that professional medics were present on the scene, though I had seen none, and none were announced that I was aware of at the time. Mark and his volunteer team do not know they are present either. Mark notices a small group of organized protesters, dressed in all black like the rest, who will spend the rest of the rally breaking stuff as they go. Black Bloc members, a crowd he fears for their ability to bring chaos to rallies he might have to medic. As if a bad omen, he tells me, some of the police that night were wearing thin blue line patches, something banned in the SPVM since 2024. Mark would be keenly aware of the repercussions of those two groups for the rest of the night. At first, I was accompanying two fine folks, easily spotted by their pink bunny hats, who tell me they would in no case abandon me, the urgency present in their tone. It's the last time I see them, as I would immediately split away on my quest to fill out the pages of my notebook. Bathed in chants and signs protesting the very police around them and their presence, the crowd starts to head out at about 19:30. Communication has been minimal up to this point between the protesters and police. The 5 or 6 word slogans thrown around were a challenge met with some mild warnings coming back from the police's side, sometimes nothing. The energy or the sound of the boots on the pavement might have brought out a new, more reciprocal relationship between the two groups. Or maybe it was the more explicit divide between them. Physical, metal or wood barriers covered in banners separate some segments of protesters from police. They would later be used as a shield for protesters on the front and sides, and a battering ram for the police. As soon as we leave our abode near Sir Vauclin and make our way towards the cars on the street, I notice, as does Mark, that the yellow-vested kind is no longer predominant among the police. Now, as the street bends, the second team of all-black, armor-wearing, visor-clad, baton-carrying riot police take over. They have white helmets, red armbands, no shields just yet. They scream back more often than their colleagues. The march wears on, the chants get louder. Mark sees a police officer transfer a man's umbrella from his possession to a nearby trash can, its resting place for the remaining hours. I go from the front to the back trying to find any more people to talk to or reunite with my friends, something difficult when everyone is wearing black. Maybe they weren't that recognizable after all. Mark is on the sidelines, surveying the action. The police bring out flashlights to shine in people's faces, I assume to make them feel like they've been spotted. I appreciate for a moment the irony that this protest asked for vengeance and not visibility. Trans people have, for the past decade, enjoyed hypervisibility, which is to say, We lost the ability to hide as a political target, while still in effect having too little power to protect ourselves. I am in the officer's spotlight, but only as a warning that his might be the hand that only a while later would strike me. Indeed, I feel much better within the group, just as I typically do being a trans person operating for other trans people outside the purview of the long or short arm of the law. It has been my modus operandi right until my bubble popped, and the election of Donald Trump and the candidacy of Pierre Poilievre and the killing of yet more trans people left me outside the status quo of the last few years. The status quo is preserved for close to half an hour, though it's not a particularly comfortable one. I estimate 300 to 400 protesters, about 40 police. That's when the first shot goes up. A bang, and a few sparkles cracking in the night air prepare me to run. And people around me grow quiet, or rather they shrink, physically and metaphorically trying to get back inside the group for safety, though not half a second later others cheer. It was a firecracker, shot in the air by members of the protest, to keep everyone on track, to celebrate, to be loud, probably all three. I cannot gauge the reaction of the police from my position in the middle of the protest under a giant trans flag, but I wouldn't need their covered faces to understand anyway. A few more shots like the first one go out, marking like a highly irregular and very stressful clock the last few moments I could walk and not run, a bunch of starting pistols before the real one. Tack, 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 tack. I read the next day in the few papers that talked about the event that this all started because someone threw pink paint at the police. I looked at my clothes and my glasses that were speckled with pink. Away from the eyes of the journalists who get press releases, near the front, on the right side of the rally, someone used the fireworks to shoot at police, or at least towards them. The police tried taking down the barriers that served as physical separation up until then used pepper spray on protesters close to them, and threw tear gas canisters. Everyone was covered in pink paint. 20 o'clock. The first real shot goes out. I can't differentiate it from any of the ones that have gone out before, but seconds later, the smoke clues me in. The police shouting to clear out begins immediately, but so does the violence. They have cut the first half hour of the march from the last. They have cut the front half of the crowd from the back. Throughout the rest of the skirmish, lasting about another half hour, they will continue to use divide and conquer tactics on the protesting mass. I was in the front half, and it's hard to narrate from my position the mix of the blindness and the shadow of smoke and tears with the events I could piece since. I do not know what is going on. I cannot smell smoke, but people run. So do I. People grab onto each other to keep from falling on the ground or behind and getting separated. So do I. As we all run, my thoughts become hazy, and soon so do my eyes, burning from a mixture of tear gas and pepper spray. My only awareness of the police, aside from their weapons, is the calls they shout over the herd of some 200 people. Gazeli. Mark's mask proved worthy against tear gas, but his friends didn't. It's faulty, and Mark has to carry him to safety. They manage to find a spot on the sidelines of the very narrow sidewalks, miraculously letting them sit down and recover. Mark puts his training in motion. He waves his bottle of Malox as far over his head as he can, a message and hopefully a beacon to the injured who can still see. I am too blinded to find him, or really see anything that isn't a blurry view of the ground, always wavering nearer to my view as I try not to trip. I fall back somewhat, enough to reach the point where the bubbling of the crowd meets the advancing barricade of police. They chase after us, shouting to move, 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 and waving their batons. I can't run fast enough to escape the hits, and neither can others close to me. One officer takes a swing directly into my right side. I try to ignore the hit and run further along with the group. The police behind run after us, the police ahead block our path, creating a crowd crush. The only way is through a narrow alley which some 200 people take at the same time. I nearly slam my entire body on a light post and fall flat on the ground. At this point, I am practically too blinded to even see my own feet or the difference between sidewalk and street, and am purely grabbing onto others for direction. Some people are forcibly thrown out of protection circles and onto the ground, others kicked in the back of the leg or got their legs swept to be pepper sprayed, yet others have their goggles removed to be pepper sprayed directly in the eyes. All of these are against the Police Code of Conduct in Montreal and against the pepper spray procedures of the SPVM. Mark, who had been nursing his friend, and whichever passers-by make their way to him, decided to flee along with the back half, the one that hadn't yet been cornered by police. It was calmer than the front and more united, so the police threw tear gas canisters into it and kept applying the same tactics that worked on the front, forcibly separating people, throwing them on the ground, breaking protection circles, pepper spraying liberally, and finally chasing increasingly smaller groups around with beatings. Those tactics, Mark tells me, result in him having to treat two tourists unaffiliated with the protests, getting caught in the police's vengeance. Journalists are harassed, beaten, pepper sprayed, the independent ones at least, the ones present and leaving their cameras through the batons and the sticky and reaching fingers of the police. I'm not so sure about La Presse, City News, CTV News, if they're still involved. Whatever they intend, the result is the same. Tomorrow, and at every protest, a black shroud is thrown over the speech of protests, a closed casket on the free press, a curtain drawn over accurate reporting. I run blind in whatever direction I can, hoping to escape the armed police chasing me, when my arm makes contact with someone going near the opposite direction. I can't see, and am at last prepared to fall to the ground and accept whatever beating is coming. Mark gets separated from his friend for the first time, and his small group, now outnumbered by the police chasing it, is forced through another narrow alley. In front is a large regiment of police. The person I bump into shouts one simple command: "You're with me now. Run." He grabs me by the shoulder, and it's only after a few minutes of running with my eyes closed, stuck to his left side, that I notice he's also carrying a girl on his right. I'll call them John and Mary. Out of the group, John's the only one who can see, and he's shouting for a medic at the top of his lungs. I start doing the same. Mark's group, disoriented and lost, has arrived back through the original alley I left out of, no longer directly chased by police. They'll attempt to help stragglers stuck where the rest of us have escaped from, but two tear gas canisters convince them to dissolve in order to avoid beatings. Two strangers and I finally make it to a spot of relative safety near the concave entrance of some hotel or other. Mary collapses on the floor, still conscious but in bad shape, and John tends to her. He keeps shouting for a medic. In one of the many ironies of the night, I am the only one in a position to act as a lookout, while the pepper spray, tear gas, and paint over my glasses compete for the main cause of my blindness. I spot a mass of police standing side to side from one side of the street to the other. I cannot tell if they're moving, I cannot tell if they see us. What I saw was probably the back of the same police cornering Mark. Around us are stray protesters running for cover, yellow-vested police on bikes, and barely any civilians. After 2 minutes of shouting, a medic comes to help. Not one of those sent by the city to protect us, if they were indeed still present, but a volunteer protest medic like Mark. I learned Mary got beat over the head some time before and was now feeling queasy, either a sign of a panic attack or a concussion. The medic looks her over for a few seconds, no bleeding. He stays with us long enough for a fifth member to join our shelter, who got a baton to the shoulder, and we all get some water while trying to recover from the eye irritation caused by exposure to pepper spray. I omit mentioning much about my injury, as my whole being is paying closer attention to everything but my side. It is 20:30, and there is nothing more for us here. After verifying none of us are carrying anything illegal to make sure we're safe traveling together, all four of us leave the raging streets behind. In all, the next morning the damages amount to two shattered windows, a car damaged by members of the Black Bloc, which Mark could spot, Some trash cans and signs flipped in fetal position, one subject put in custody by police, and one lonely umbrella still in a trash can. In the news, no injured. None of the protesters thrown to the ground, beat over the head, blind and ignorant of the help that might surround them, found it in their will to trail backwards through the line of police, shouting and running at them to reach a paramedic. A pity. I hug the guy who saved my ass and wave goodbye to the girl as we reach Metro Square Victoria and part ways. My eyes are tired, and my notebook is still empty of all the events I wanted to note. The fourth member of our crew, a butch lesbian I'll call Sarah, tells me about the after party in a bar far, far away. I don't consider the offer very long. I could kill for a beer, man. 10 p.m. My feet do not touch the ground from a four-legged stool, and my back is arched as I nurse a tall glass of ice water over my temple. The bar table looks like the most comfortable place to rest my head right now, which is a shame, since I am not drunk. Sarah and I sat heavily after long conversation about both our experiences, and I was too stressed to put in a question that threads the needle between pleasant banter and gruesome detail. At the bar, every 5 ticks of the minute hand is met with cheers as someone new stumbles in to confirm they made it through. I obviously do not know any of the people I feel I am intricately linked to, but I am relieved to know strangers might have survived. Our bartender's boyfriend comes in much later than me, and I'll swear to anyone they hugged for all the time someone might love a familiar ghost returning just once from the grave, even if I don't know their story. Somewhere deep in me, I hope to see a familiar pink bunny hat pass ears first through that door. I never do. Sarah is facing away, words drifting inaudibly towards a stranger. In the corner, the designated therapy guy is kept busy. The music is going strong. All sounds I cannot hear or try not to mind. My nose is thoroughly in my notebook. What did we all fight for? I think. My mind comes up blank. Sarah, who is more experienced in protest than I am, can't formulate the kind of answer that makes headlines or even goes on a banner. The Trans Day of Visibility, sorry, Vengeance, tagline, fuck visibility, we want vengeance, desperately pulls us away from any thoughts of outreach. But it doesn't bring us closer to vengeance either, after a loss so devastating it was almost comical. The only clue the chants and banners might have given me is police partout, justice nulle part. Police everywhere, justice nowhere. But if not justice, then what was John doing by quite literally dragging me to safety? Was that not an extension of trans justice? If this is what's necessary for trans justice, then we cast a strange light on the role of trans hatred, of trans violence, of trans discrimination. Something's moving to my right. It's just Sarah, leaving. His arm hurts, and now's a good time to rest it off. Suddenly, the conversation I was too busy to follow comes into focus. I hear the story of a volunteer medic. He says his name is Mark, and he convinces me to stay on my shitty stool and stay my shitty lingering thoughts for the rest of the night. He makes me jealous, because he found a place that does aftercare and food before he found us. He makes me laugh by saying he'd kiss the chef on the mouth consensually, he laughs off, who made his delicious curry and mashed potatoes. A thought sparks in my head where I hoard it for the next while. The metros have stopped running. It's too late. We part. I'm alone. I take them off and realize how much my clothes smell of pepper spray. When I shower, I remember that the burning tears washing off aren't my own, they're from the gas. And when I go to bed, I replay the events again. Then a few more times, and they narrow closer and closer to the 1/2 a second where the baton connects with my side. I think thoughts I probably shouldn't. Like, where is the guy who hit me now? Is he going to bed satisfied? What does he think in all this? Am I hated? Am I hated? Really, am I hated? And How could I be brought to a point where I swing into a crowd, happy with my job? I wake up the next morning when I realize I'm not breathing well. I cough and immediately find myself curled over in pain. I've underestimated the severity of a baton hit. I look myself once over in the mirror, and red dots speckle the shadow of my right arm with all the difficulty that comes in lifting it. Worse than the pain, however, is the loneliness creeping its way through my body like a disease. Yesterday I was with Mark, Sarah, Mary, John. I could hide in the bathing chants of Bella Chow, screamed at the top of our lungs at 1 a.m. But today I need to grapple with the unavoidable fact that our police is not there to help us, is not there to protect a fleeing trans girl worried that it might be too late for her friends. To aftercare, protests, and BDSM is to understand the purpose of our actions and reconcile them with reality. In that way, I believe we failed. This was a protest organized with no clear direction. Literally, its path was improvised, with no guiding message, with no definite end. It was a fight for survival in the same way being trans is always a fight for survival, but with added immediate violence from a system that preferred aggression to the effort of reconciliation. And at the finish line, we were dropped, presumably to come back next time twice as desperate. Standing in the aftermath, I was made to frame my own way into a post-protest world, something strange, since for most people, it was Tuesday. Tuesday was a work day for me, Monday too, and I thought I could find comfort in the people I considered closest. The familiar mundanity of the kind souls and faces I've seen for the past few years would set me back on the right track of a prelapsarian existence. I returned home after managing to complete the day more in pain than I started it, but I still couldn't get answers to the burning question, and the thoughts that haunted me at night now plagued me in the day. I still couldn't feel normal. Wednesday was off, but I decided to do some errands outside to clear the air. My shoulder was now displaced out of its usual comfortable resting place by swelling in my armpit. Out in the metro, I spotted a gang of police nestled around the ticket booth. It was hard to cross the turnstiles, but as I did, my stomach turned at the same time as the bar at the idea the cop who hit me might be revolving around me at the very moment. Not that he might be them, I'm imagining a man, but that they might be him, that any of them could take his place. Riding through the stations that moved from there to me, I still couldn't shake off the afterglow of a night too poorly lived. That out of time, out of place feeling that everyone else is moving at a pace you can't comprehend, and they can't live. I felt I was sitting in a hotel hallway watching strangers go by, them thinking I was a novelty along with the wallpaper, me knowing the wallpaper was always there, and they were the passing oddity. I came home very quickly that day. Thursday I was booked for even worse pain, and it was an all-day affair. I hadn't been able to sleep on my right side in a couple of nights and was quite tired, and the swelling hadn't stopped. It was clear to everyone I needed to see a doctor. It was clear to me that I needed emotional support, and people whose presence I had underestimated turned up. Among these tea talks, Mark could give me his account and thoughts in much greater detail. He was as conflicted as me on the outcome of the protest. Yes, it did produce visibility, but was it the right kind of visibility? Was it enough visibility to make it worth it? Yes, he was the least harmed of the people I met, but superlatives don't mean success. He pondered whether the protest might have needed more visibility or more defense, and whether it might have been better to attract the people put off by the word vengeance. Ultimately, we both came to the same question. We were a few days from the UK Supreme Court's ruling on gender and biological sex, and rumblings were already making their way through our community. We had seen a few more cases of trans people getting assaulted or arrested, particularly in relation to bathroom bills. in the US and UK, and they would continue to make their way to our news feeds for the next while. The Conseil des Sages came to their preliminary statement in early June. Hormonotherapy, already a months-long, if not years-long endeavor, is being prescribed too quickly, and doctors should have a duty to inform the parents of children, even those over 14, of their medical secrets if they are trans. Even if it puts their life in danger. 2 people were killed by the Sûreté du Québec in a 24-hour time span in early March, and the Canadian election in April threatened to bring conservative extremists in power. The heat of June brought an all-new insurrection by armed forces on civilian populations in Los Angeles, those days that are a memory of worse things to be. In July, a trans woman and a non-binary person who claimed asylum in Canada out of fear for their lives south of the border. In August, the SPVM gasses a park of innocent bystanders and children, a military takeover of Washington, D.C. Essentially, it was clearer every day what we fought against, but we got no closer to figuring out what it is we were fighting for at the March 31st protests. We knew by then no news outlet held any serious ambitions of discussing it, seeing as the trickle of articles in April simply quoted police representatives. If we had been more aggressive, we might have been putting that energy into protecting trans kids through force. If we had been less, we might have had a larger crowd and formed a united movement. Instead, we were 300 to 400, marching for about an hour before getting our asses kicked in the night in the dark where no one saw us, a few heard us, and absolutely no one knew anything about us the next day in the news. We all went home moaning about our injuries. Some of us went home drunk. We concluded the talk on the sad note that the violence of the protest, the beatings, tear gas, exhausted running, might have been its point, if the outcome proves the purpose. This was we'd relucted to protest against police brutality. The solution then is to just keep letting them hit us. Like a gambler at the casino, hoping for the one lucky break where people might notice the problems of the system. Showing how violent the police prefer being rather than giving up their power is, after all, the only outcome we can envision. So until then, just hit us. And just hit us. And just hit us. And just hit us. I wish I could recount the ticking of the clock on the wall, but I couldn't hear it from my spot in the corner chair of a walk-in trauma clinic waiting room. I'd watched the longer hand complete a full rotation and be well on its way to a second at that point. Of course, I had arrived much, much earlier, but I was told I needed to take an appointment and come back later. I read the sign on the wall again, just to make sure it was a walk-in clinic on my way in, then out, then in again. I sat down in the chair with a sound of pain marking my steps as well as a small crouch required to get my firm ass onto the cushion. Over the next 1.5 hours I had some time to think, despite the heavy distractions of my anxiety, a luxury I'm afforded by the bland white and blue walls of the infirmary. Time flowed like liquid from a fine needle in milliliter increments. I had time to think, for example, about my various attempts to get medical help over the past few days, how I stayed on the phone with 811 for 1.5 hours for an over 45-minute wait without someone picking up on the other side, how my family doctor's voicemail redirected me to a Government of Quebec website, how that website to book an appointment without a family doctor kept refreshing itself to the page of my unavailable family doctor, how a call to a pharmacist only got me a disgruntled man telling me to find a trauma clinic, and finally how that trauma clinic managed to extract an appointment out of me. The line of succession of the progressive death of my medical hope. I had time to think about my writing. I was sat with a journalist, a mentor, who advised me to drop my article. As a journalist, I shouldn't make enemies with the police. Some groups were useful to me, others not. This politician speak scared me as much as the idea that journalists shouldn't go after the police. coming from an old guard of the profession. It scared me as much as the possibility of who might be included in the first group, who might be left for the second. None of this, however, was meant lightly. His expression sober, he reprimanded me for insisting. I had time to think about the world again. As a trans girl, I am much worried about those things which happen in the modern world. The tide always seems ever rising to those plunged in the water, and the shore ever dry to those parched on land. I imagine myself then as the back of a sail on a boat ran ashore, fluttering, directionless, bound by the ship to hope for the next wave, yet consistently assailing the land once again. It was a nice analogy, but it felt kind of pretentious now that police violence was a real possibility any time I tried to enact my political rights. Not a position I envied myself over. Neither did I envy my position in the increasingly uncomfortable chair, being quite relieved by my name called out loud. After a short examination by a nurse, height, weight, blood pressure, I finally stood before the door of a real trauma doctor, the person who could set me right again. He checked my breathing, then told me his clinic didn't treat trauma. I'd be better off elsewhere, he said, giving me a sheet with other doors I could knock at if I wanted to keep struggling. I left the clinic with that piece of paper, and it would quickly end up in the bin. It had been around 2 weeks since the protest, and I still didn't know whether I had a broken rib. But now I needed once again to go back to work. I had food to prepare, I had clothes to clean, I had to go back to my life. Police be damned, I still had to work. If a body finds yourself on your kitchen table, the post-mortem examination is in order. Our policing system is currently a rotting and decayed. Its purpose is to follow orders, and its chief instrument is violence. No wonder, then, that it is so susceptible to corruption and authoritarianism. Laying on top the lengthy delays and facelessness of our healing system, especially for trans people, the backwards lawmaking of our justice system, and the incurious laissez-faire of our information diffusion system. None of these bodies am I in the position to clear out, save for the one representing my own failures and uncertainty. At the protest after-party, emotional support was available to extract and unspool the nuanced feelings of facing violence in an urban, read wealthy environment. But the exercise was seemingly not encouraged by the protest's format, stuck between a beating and senselessness. So, I have transparently been using this present article as my own post-mortem, as I usually do with writing and emotional subjects. Last we left off, I was lost and confused in early April. At the time, I was writing an article called A Lie in April, and it was supposed to have three parts, collectively exploring the lies the police tell us when they claim to protect us, and the lies we tell ourselves when we can't understand the purpose behind our actions. No postmortems, only a continuous in media res. But of course, talking and thinking and writing provide an outlook not offered by forever being in between acts. The confusion I'd cultivated slowly thawed off, while the anxiety of being in crowded places, of seeing police, of loud noises or black clothing remained. The injury eventually healed 2 weeks, then a month to feel like new, probably bruised, not broken. But the experience remained for better and worse. I carried that experience with me everywhere I went, my pockets full of the visceral stuff the protest was made of. Intestines were dripping out of me, eyeballs pouring from my bag. A finger or two might have lodged itself somewhere I still can't find. And I showed that uncomposed body to people, who surprised me with a kind of guts they also lug around. Queers will never cease to amaze me with the kindness and openness with which they're always willing to exhibit the stories in their mind, on their bodies, in their possession. The point of the protest might have been its outcome, if such is a good way to determine purpose. After the half hour of violence, as it continued on in my head, The next months were kind to stupid jokes, to sharing recipes between strangers, to the camaraderie of knowing there are people willing to save me, no matter how these things seem obfuscated by the usual news cycle, to finding meaning in the people I had underestimated. If the point of the protest was its outcome, then its purpose might have been for us, the queer community, to have greater self-knowledge, a rising sun amidst the rising tide. If the point of the protest was its outcome, then at least I did get Mark another share of his curry, of his potatoes. I did find the people who made them. I did get the recipes. I did get it. I did. Much more work will have to be achieved as a community and as a society on post-mortem for all the other great problems that plague us, once they have been vanquished. The lingering effects of the failures of policing, of healthcare, of justice, and of poor information and education will be with us long after their bodies are cleared out. Regardless, if so many bodies start piling up in your house, maybe you should start asking questions about the house. Pour les patates spéciales manif, couper des patates en quartiers, massager avec épices à kebab, sel, poivre, huile, enfourner à 425 Fahrenheit avec l'ail. Puis pour l'ail, il faut juste mettre l'ail entier avec de l'huile enrobée de papier aluminium. Donc on va mettre tout ça dans le four. Tu veux m'aider à couper des patates? Yeah. Ok, l'ail. Maintenant, en plus de ça, je vais aussi mettre. J'ai des gants. Qu'est-ce qu'on va faire de voir? Non? Tu vois? Wow, shit. Ah, fuck. C'est good, c'est good. Alright.
Oh my god.
C'est fucking chiant.
Ouais, hein?
Je vais attendre que ça fasse.
Ouais.
Ça serait smart.
Ça serait nice.
Alors moi, je vais faire fondre du beurre dans le pot avec...
Bien.
C'est la même chose que tu veux.
Non, mais same thing, c'est même meilleur quasiment. Ok.
Ça, c'est ma sauce à l'ocredo qui n'a absolument aucun rapport avec l'autre.
Mais t'inquiète.
Mais que je dois faire maintenant parce que je suis comme ça chez.
Margarine. Alors, ouais.
Je pense que si j'avais plongé dans l'aluminium dans un verre d'eau quelque chose,
Ouais.
tu m'en prendrais pour le goûter.
Hein?
Tu m'en prendrais pour le goûter.
Ouais, hein? Ah. Merci. Ça goûte les patates.
Ça goûte les patates.
Yeah. Donc la purée.
Ouais, ça ressemble à une purée, right?
Ben oui,
C'est
100%
good.
une purée. Est-ce que je capable pas de checker la purée? Oh, t'es tellement bonne, moi.
Tellement.
Est-ce
J'ai regardé toutes les émissions de Ricardo.
que... Ricardo, il fait comme ça encore moins bien que toi, là. Non, Ricardo, il tremble dans là.
Mais moi, je tremble plus.
Shake it. Oh! Oh! Yes!
Voilà. Ça sent bon, ça sent tellement bon. Ça patate et ail, genre,
Patate et ail.
j'ai pas vraiment raté de ça. Alright.
Hey, mais ça a marché.
Ça goûte fucking bon. Ouais.
Mais let's go. Tu peux
Vas-y.
reprendre. Oh my god. Legit patate et ail.
Ouais.
C'est vraiment ça.
T'as besoin de rien d'autre.
Non. Yeah.
10 sur 10.
10 sur 10.
J'ai raté toutes les parties de la recette, mais c'est quand même.
Mais elles sont là. Je veux dire, elles sont là.